All right, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and I'm doing a series of video presentations as we get on our way to build our website. Okay. In the last presentation, I went through the difference between using inline CSS, which we originally used to make this H1 red. Then we looked at some internal CSS to originally make this H2 tag white. Then we looked at some external CSS where we made this H3 tag red. Then I took everything that we had and I actually put it into our CSS file. All right. Now, one thing to mention to you, let's pretend for just a second. First of all, I want to comment this out. And if you remember, the comments that we used in HTML look like this. They don't work in CSS. In CSS, when you want to comment something out in a CSS file, you start your comment with a /* and you end your comments with a */. So that is now all commented out. And there's a reason I'm doing this. Let's pretend for a minute that we wanted all of our H1s, all of our H2s, and all of our H3s to be pink. Now I could go and write H1 color pink, H2 color pink, and that would work just fine. But it's a little bit of a waste if I know they're always going to be the same color. I can type in H1, H2, H3, and then I can say color pink, just like that. Now I could put each one of these on its own line as well. That wouldn't hurt anything. So again, I could do it like this. And oftentimes you'll see it done like that. But you'll notice that once I do that and I come back over here and I open it with Live Server, they're all pink. All right. That's all I wanted to show you in this particular part of the lecture. Now I'm going to uncomment this and I want to show you something interesting. All right. So I've uncommented them. And let's do a file save. And let's go back in and let's run Live Server again. And what color do you think they'll be? They're still pink. And the reason for that has to do with where it's spaced. Here I defined it, but here I overrode it. All right, so the last one in wins, so to speak. All right, so now I've got that back again, and let's see if it changed it back to red, white, and blue. And indeed it did. All right, now I want to take a couple minutes here and talk about some of the verbiage that's used with this stuff. All right. And we'll pull on this one right here. It doesn't matter which one we use. All right. But whether it's H1 or it's H2 or it's H3 or it's the P tag or it's the body tag, etc., or even the asterisk. All right. Each one of those things is known as a selector. So this is the H1 selector, the H2 selector, etc. In fact, if I put my mouse over it, notice what it says, selector. All right, and it's interesting. It says selector specificity. It says 001. We're going to talk color in just a bit, but it means I want 0 amount of red, 0%, 0% of green, and 100% of blue. That's the 001. Notice when I come up to here, how it changes to, for the H1, well, it looks the same, but basically that is what they're talking about, okay? Now, so this, again, is the selector. The color that we put in here, this thing, in here it's color followed by a colon. So that thing, and here it's font size, etc. Those are known as properties. What comes after the colon, so in here red, white, blue, to rem, those are known as the property values. All right, and if I do several of these in here, so let's do the body, we'll say background color, and I'm going to add in here font family, and I'm going to change the font family. And let's something that we should be able to tell the difference. Let's try this Trebuchet. All right. Now, Everything's cool, as far as I know. It all works and all is okay. If I want to make it easier to read, I can do this. Notice I've got these in quotes because there's a blank space in there. So I can do that. And I only did it like that so you could read everything. But when I come back in here now and look, notice how different that looks as opposed to, well, they're all going to look the same now because it's been refreshed. All right. So what did I do right here? Well, I came in and I let the system know that for every paragraph that I have in here, I want it to have a font size of 2 rem, and I want the font family for everything in here to be this. So again, you should notice a big change. Remember how this looks right here, all right? And we should notice a big change between that and if I come back in and set it to something else. So this is font family again. So for some reason, so font family, all right? And let's try, I don't even know what impact is, all right? And you can see quite a difference. So that's an immediate change. Now, what I want to show you about this is I'm going to leave off that semicolon. And I'm going to hit Control S to save. Now I'm going to go back again. And it's what happened to my stuff. Every line that you put into a CSS file should have a semicolon on the end. In fact, when you look here, it's letting me know, hey, I don't know what you're trying to do here. But notice as soon as I put the semicolon back in, how it works. All right. Now, I want to mention a couple more things. You'll notice I've got a little bit of order to this. So this is what? That's my reset. And if I want, I can even put I can put a comment up there if I want to. You don't have to do this, of course. But I'm going to put in here CSS Reset. All right. This, I'm going to put in here, I'm just going to say global settings. And what does that mean? Well, if it's for the body, it should be for the whole thing, right? And I could put in yet other things in here as well if I want to do that. All right. Now, the next thing I want to do, so we mentioned that when you put these in the selector, then inside of curly braces, you can put one or more. These things collectively are known as style rules. So we have said that we want the background color for our body to be this gray. We want the font family for the entire document to be this. Now, that really was an ugly font family. It was kind of hard to read. I actually like Arial because it's simple. So I'm going to use that one. Now, if I want, let's say that not only do I want for H2, do I want the color to be white, but I want the background color to be black. All right. So I've got that. I come back in here, and you can see it's immediately been changed. All right. Now, so the rule is the selector, and then inside of curly braces, the property, followed by a colon, followed by what you should set that property to, followed by a semicolon. Even the last line typically has a semicolon, but if you leave it off of just the last line, you won't get an error. But let's say I left it off, and now I come back and I decide, you know what? I want the font size to be 1 rem, let's just say. All right, notice I get that same error because I didn't put my semicolon there. If I put my mouse over it, it says semicolon expected. So put that back in there. All right, now one more thing. You'll notice I've used red here. Whoops. And then I also use this thing. There's at least, and I'm going to show you them right now. I want to show you 4 or 5 different ways of setting color. All right. So for the background color, let's just say I can use in here the word gray. G-R-A-Y or G-R-E-Y. Never know how that's spelled, but they do look a little bit different. But I'm going to say A-Y with a semicolon. And if I do that, you'll notice my background color is gray. Pretty dark gray, darker than I showed you before, but it worked. All right. And then when I come back in here, let's talk about other ways that we can do this. So we said gray. And let's say, I don't know what's called the hex code for GRAY, but I'm going to find it out right now. It's 808080. So I'm going to change that. And just so you can see it, you saw what color that gray is. You just saw it right there. All right, I'm going to immediately, for just a second, I'm going to come back in and I'm going to reset it to white with a semicolon there, and then show you this. Why? Because it's white again. All right, now I want to show you another way to set it to gray. You can use the word gray, you already saw that, but I can also put in here pound 80, 80, 80. And you'll notice, because this is built into the editor, that it shows you that color again. So if I save and I look, it's now gray again. All right, so what is that? I mean, what's the difference? Why do you use one as opposed to the other? This pound sign right here, and I'm going to put a comment off to the side. All right, the pound sign means what follows is a hexadecimal or base 16 value. Now, each one of these, that's the amount of red, that's the amount of green, and that's the amount of blue that you can put in here. And the numbers that you put in for those 6 digits have to be between 00 and FF or FF. So let's talk for a second about what that means. All right. So hexadecimal means base 16. So you and I are used to counting like this. And let me just put a comment in here. You and I are used to counting like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, etc. That's not how you count, because that's base 10. Base 16, you say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, A, B, C, D, E, F. Then 1, 0. It's not 10. So this is 1 through 9. This is our equivalent of 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and this means 16 in our base 10. That means 0 ones and 1 16. All right. So in other words, what you'll notice here, and I want to show you this, if I change this background color from 808080, okay, and if I change it to 000000, that's a total absence of red, a total absence of green, and a total absence of blue. Since I have a total absence, the color ends up being black. On the other end, if I do this, all right, hopefully you'll notice it's white. That's a total saturation of red, a total saturation of green, and a total saturation of blue. All right, let's talk about another way that we can do this. I can come in here and I can say this. I can say RGB, which means the amount of red, the amount of green, and the amount of blue I want to use. And if I say again 0, 0, 0, lo and behold, it becomes black. And now it's not A, it's 0, 0 through 255. All right. So if I come in here and put in 255, 255, 255, you'll notice it's white. If I put in 255 and a 0 and another 0, you'll notice it's red because that's a total saturation of red, a total absence of green, and a total absence of blue. And as you'd guess, if I make this 255, it's all green. And if I make the last one 255, it's all blue. All right. So I've shown you so far using a hex code. I've shown you using RGB. And with RGB, you can add yet another thing in here. So I can make this, instead of RGB, I can make it RGBA, which is the amount of opacity. So it's how opaque or how see-through, transparent is it. So notice if I put in here 0. All right, so if I put a 0 in there, it's saying set the background color. What doesn't it like here? Well, I think it's actually going to be okay. All right, we'll find out right here. So I'm going to leave that and look, and it's white again. Well, instead of making it 0, let's make it 1 and save. And notice it's all blue. Why did that happen? Well, because we're using the blue here, and when we made it 0, we said to make that totally transparent, that blue. Now notice if I want this to kind of look bleached out a little bit, I can make it like 0.5. All right, and now notice it's still blue, but it actually looks purplish. All right, the higher I make this number, remember it goes between 0 and 1, and it's known as the alpha value. The more blue it looks, and the more I make it towards 0, the lighter it looks. So I've just shown you 3 different ways of setting color. All right. What do I mean? I showed you, number 1, what are typically known as the color constants. Things like red, green, blue, corn silk, etc. That was the first one. Then second, we looked at the hex color codes. Hex is short for hexadecimal. And they were things like pound FF0000 for red, pound 000000 for black, etc. And we just looked at really 2 more. All right, so we looked at using the RGB, which was the amount of red. So again, something like 0, 255, 0 for blue, RGB, and you shouldn't put a space in there because it's real easy to trip this up, so like that. And RGB, I don't know, 255, 255, 255 for white, etc. And we looked at RGBA, which has 4 numbers in it. So for example, 0, let's look at the one we just did. 0 means total absence of red, 0, a total absence of green, 255, a total presence of blue, and 0.5, which means semi-opaque or semi-transparent. There's yet another thing that you can use in here, and I don't use this one often, and I've been reading articles lately that say that we should use this, and it's HSL, and there's another one that's HSLA. All right, and this stands for hue, saturation, and I believe it's light. So let's take a quick look. Let's jump back. Colors, HSL. And there it is in W3 schools. So again, it uses percentages. All right. So there's the amount of hue, the amount of saturation, and the amount of lightness. All right. So you can take a look in there. So notice the saturation goes there to 100. If we cut it down from 100 to 50, you can see how the color changes. And the light, if we take that and cut it down to 25, the smaller we're making it, the darker it's getting in this case. And my guess is if we make that 0 and 0, it's black. And again, if we make that, how about 100%? Well, 100, 100, and 100. Notice how it's white now. All right, so that's hue, saturation, and light. All right, now that becomes really important just because of the fact that it's used all over the place. Not the hue, saturation, and light necessarily. All right, but the fact is that you use color all over the place in here. So I've shown you examples of color constants. And if you don't know what the constants are, so for instance, in here where I chose red, I mean, I could come in here and you'll notice if I put in A, those are all my color constants with A, B, C, D, etc. until I get to red. All right, and if I want to choose this one, I can just double click it or click on it. There you go. So I've just shown you in here for the color constants, I showed you an example of using the hex codes, using RGB, which stands for red, green, blue, RGBA, which is red, green, blue with alpha, HSL, which I showed you the example from W3 schools for hue, saturation, and light, and HSLA, which again is hue, saturation, light, alpha. All right. One last thing I want to say in here, I must be getting close, and that is if you've got things that repeat. So in other words, if I have, let's just say, for black like this, that hex color code, 000000, you can say this, or you can just shorten it to this. So instead of FFFFFF, you can just use 3 Fs. All right. And that's it for this lecture.